All right, today we are going to be talking about factoring polynomials. We will specifically be talking about factoring trinomials. So just to review, let's look at a problem that would have just been quadratic factoring. So with quadratic factoring, we know that I've got my two parentheses here, and in these first slots is going to be factors of 3x squared, and in the second slots is going to be factors of 7. So let's think about 3x squared. Some factors of 3x squared are going to be, well, factors of 3 would be 3 and 1. And now I need to think about factors of x squared. Well, that's just x and x. So in these first slots, I'm going to put 3x, and I'm going to put, I can either put 1x or x. I'm just going to put x. With that in mind, now I'm thinking through factors of 7. So some factors of 7 are, well, again, just like 3, 7's a prime number, so it's just going to be 7 and 1. And where I place them is going to be a little bit tricky, because I have to figure out where to place them to get exactly 22 for that middle term. So let's say I place them here. Well, remember, to kind of check this or try this out, I'm going to have to FOIL. But I should know that the first should give me 3x squared, and the last should give me 7, because I picked out those factors specifically. I'm really looking at the inner and the outer, or I should say the outer and the inner. So I'm thinking through is 3x plus the inner would be 7 times x plus 7x equal to 22x. Well, no, it equals 10x. So that way it's not going to work. Well, let me try switching around the factors, and I'll check it with the inner and outer of FOIL and see it that way. So let's say I have 3x plus 1 and x plus 7. So now when I try it out, I'm checking and I'm seeing the outer, so 3x times 7 would give me 21x, plus the inner, 1 times x plus 1x, and that does give me 22x. So these would be my two factors. So when we are factoring today, we're going to rely on our factoring principles, and we're going to rely kind of on FOIL to check ourselves, okay? So let's go ahead and look at a different type of problem, or just a different way to start, I guess. So I'm looking at this one, and it's cubic, and we haven't factored cubic, but we can, because let's first look at, is there a GCF or a greatest common factor? So if I look at all three of these numbers, I notice that there's at least one x in each of them. So I'll pull out an x, and once I've done that, if I take an x away from x cubed, that'll be x squared. If I were to divide negative 8x squared by x, that would be negative 8x, or I've taken an x away. And if I take an x away from 12x, I should just have 12. Now I'm going to think through, can I factor this more? So I'm thinking about, what are some factors of x squared? Oh yeah, that's just x and x. So those are going to sit in those spots. And notice that my x that I took out at the beginning is just sitting on the outside of the parentheses. Okay, your greatest common factor should just be sitting right there for now. Now I'm thinking through for these second spots, what are some factors of 12? And notice that the middle term is negative, but my 12 is positive, meaning that both of my factors are going to be negative, so that they multiply to get a positive number, but add up to a negative number. So I could either have negative 2 and negative 6, or I might have negative 3 and negative 4. Now, when there's no number in front, you don't have to be as specific with FOIL and guess and check. You just need to figure out which pair is going to add up to that middle number. So I'm thinking through, is negative 3 plus negative 4 negative 8? No, it's negative 7. But negative 2 plus negative 6 is negative 8. So those would be my factors. And you can FOIL to check yourself if that makes you more comfortable. But like I said, when there's not a number in front, that's kind of a trick we use. Okay? Now we are going to try out a different type of factoring, or really factoring a polynomial. So I have x to the fourth plus x squared minus 12x. That's kind of weird. So I'm going to think about maybe some factors of x to the fourth. Well, let's back up for a second. The reason that x squared has factors of x and x is because when I multiply two x's, or when I multiply two numbers that are the same, I add their exponents. So that's why x squared is from x times x, because I've got 1 plus 1 equals 2. So with x to the fourth, thinking along that same principle, it's got to be that same number, or it doesn't have to be that same number, but for our purposes, we're going to want it to be that same number, and it needs to add up to 4. Well, that would be 2 and 2. Also notice right here that I have x squared. Kind of like when I was factoring, I had x right there. It's kind of a hint to you that that's probably going to be what your leading coefficient is going to break down to. So I've got x squared and x squared sitting right here. So again, I'm going to think through factors of 12. But notice this time I have negative 12. So that means that one of my factors was negative and one of them was positive. So factors of negative 12 could be, well, we talked about them up top. We said 3 and 4, and we said 2 and 6. I could also include negative 12 and 1, or negative 1 and 12. And like I said, one of these should be negative. But let's focus on these two first. So that middle term is positive, but my last number is negative. So logically, that would mean that my smaller number would be negative, because when they add up together, they have to equal this middle, because there's nothing in front. So I have to choose from negative 3 and 4 and negative 2 and 6. So I'm thinking about negative 3 plus 4. Ooh, that would give me positive 1. Negative 2 plus 6 would give me positive 4. Not what I'm looking for in the middle, because notice that the coefficient is 1. It's not there, but remember we can think about if there's not a coefficient in front, it's 1. So I'm going to go with that it's negative 3 and positive 4. Now this problem was a little different than the one up above, but we use that same principle of, ooh, factors of the last number are going to add up to the middle. And remember, it gets more complicated if there's a number in front. But same factoring principles, even though I have x squared right here and x squared right here, okay? So if you want to check yourself, you can FOIL, and that would look like, ooh, I've got x squared times x squared, that's x to the fourth, plus 4x squared from your last, minus 3x squared from right here, and minus 12. And notice that that gives you x to the fourth plus 1x squared minus 12. Okay? So that was factoring when I had x to the fourth. Let's try it again with another one that has a fourth degree polynomial. But this time I've got a number in front. So it's a little bit more complicated than the last one, because I can't just say, ooh, they're going to add up to the middle term. I have to think through that FOILing process like we did in the very first problem we did. So I'm going to set up my parentheses. And I need to think through factors of 10y squared first. So I've got my factors of 10y squared. Factors of 10 could be 10 and 1, and then I'll have a y squared with each. Or I could have 2y squared and 5y squared. I've got two options here, and sometimes looking at the last term helps you kind of figure out which option may be the best or think through the factors. So with 5, I just have, well, 5 and 1. So I need to think through remembering that some of these factors are going to be multiplied. Like when we FOIL things out, or how I got this standard form equation, it was multiplied from two factors. So I'm going to think about, 5 times one of these numbers and see if that maybe rules something out. So 5 times 10y squared would give me 50y squared. That's way bigger than the middle. 5 times 2y would be 10y squared. Okay, so that could maybe add up to the middle. And 5 times 5y squared could maybe, it would give me 25y squared, which is close to what I have. So I'm going to try to play around with this second pair, okay? And knowing that 5 would be multiplied by both of these, but by one of them. So I'm going to play around with the second pair. If the second pair doesn't work out, I might go back to that first one. So let's place them like 2y squared and 5y squared. And then let's just place 5 and 1 and see where they go. So let's say I did plus 1 here and plus 5 here. And now I'm kind of going to FOIL to check. And here's where the FOIL to check is really going to be helpful, because I have to figure out, did I place them right? Are they the right factors? So I have 10y squared from that first one. Oh, I'm sorry, 10y to the fourth plus 10y squared plus 5y squared, and these last two multiplied, plus 5. So that middle term would be 15y squared. Not what I'm looking for. So let's try it the other way. Let's try it with 2y squared here, but let's put 2y squared plus 5, and let's put 5y squared plus 1. And again, we're going to kind of FOIL to check. So I have 10y squared from this first number times this first number plus 2y squared plus 25y squared plus 5y squared. Hey, that middle term is now 27y squared, which is what I was looking for, which means these are my factors. So again, guys, it's really a trial and error process. You're thinking through what factors might work. There are some like little thoughts or tricks you can kind of think through over here, but really it's a trial and error process, okay? So just try your best. We're gonna try one more problem. So for my last problem, I have 4x to the 6th minus 28x cubed plus 49. So a little different, but let's think through the same process that we thought through with the x to the 4th. So remember that x times x is x squared. So I'm thinking through, and we want them to be the same exponent, x to the 6th. I've got x cubed times x cubed. Remember, I want it to be the same, and with our exponent rules, if I have two things being multiplied, I would add their exponents. So that's how I would have gotten x to the 6th. And again, we can look at that trick I talked about earlier with, hey, that x cubed is sitting right there. And that's another little trick or something you can start to notice. So I have my two parentheses. And I'm thinking through what are some factors of 4x squared. So again, I have a situation where I have two different options. I could have 2x cubed times 2x cubed, because factors of 4 are 2 and 2, and factors of x to the 6th are going to be x cubed and x cubed. Or I could have 4x cubed times just 1x cubed. And again, I have two maybe good options, so I'm going to think through factors of the last number. So I have 49. And notice in this equation, the middle number is negative, but the last number is positive. If the last number is positive, either both my factors are positive or they're both negative. I'm going to say they're both negative because in the middle I have a negative number. So I either have negative 49 and negative 1, or I've got negative 7 and negative 7. And because this middle number is negative 28, and I know I'm going to multiply some of these factors, so like 2 could be multiplied by 48, or 4 could be multiplied by 48, or 1 could be multiplied by 48 eventually if I were to FOIL to check. I know that. So with that knowledge, I'm going to say it's probably not negative 49 and 1, because negative 49 is already bigger than negative 28. So I'm going to say my last two factors are, not my last two factors, but the factors that fill these last two spots in the parentheses are going to be negative 7 and negative 7. Okay, so now I'm just going to try out some factors and see if they work. So, well, because this one's 2x squared and 2x cubed and 2x cubed, I think I'm going to try that first. If that doesn't work, there's not another way I can rearrange the current factors I have, so I'll try out my other one. So if I were to FOIL, again, I would get 4x to the 6th here, like I have right up here. I do 2x cubed times this last 7, negative 7, so minus 14x cubed. And then I do this I do this negative 7 in the first parentheses times 2 in the second parentheses, 2x cubed. And that'll give me minus 14x cubed. And finally, I've got negative 7 times negative 7, that's plus 49. Oh, hey, that works out. My middle term is going to be negative 28 cubed, meaning my answer would be 2x cubed minus 7 times 2x cubed minus 7. Again, this is going to be a trial and error process, and you're going to have to do some practice with it, and you'll get better at it.